Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, John?
No, I'm doing fine, thank you. It's good to hear your voice.
Well, it's good to hear you too.
Yeah. Are you doing okay? Your health is okay and everything?
I'm doing great for my age. I'm blessed.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a lot to it's easy to forget the blessings we have. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
We
That's
just
right.
take them for granted. Well, I'm so glad you're going to play with us. That's awesome.
Oh, I'm so glad you
Yeah.
asked.
Man, it'd be great. We can really play some old Monroe stuff. And Dan Wells, you know Dan?
Dan.
Dan Wells.
I know who he is.
Yeah.
I won't say that we're friends or close friends
Well,
or anything. You know.
You would become you'll become friends because he's just a great guy. He grew up around Sandy Mush or something like that up there. It's in Buncombe County.
Okay.
Yeah, and he came to NC State and started taking fiddle lessons, and he never talked about. I mean, he was into the fiddle, and then somebody asked me, "Have you ever heard this Dan Wells guy sing?" And I said something like, "I don't think he sings much. He's a fiddle man mostly." But I asked him, and he sang some song, and I was like, "Wow!" He just blew me away how good he was. I said, "Man, don't worry about a fiddle. You know, if you can sing like that." He's with Alan Mills, Lost and Found now, and you know he's been with James King and the Churchmen, I believe, and not the Churchmen, but James King was definitely, and with Lorraine's band, and you know so he'll be singing lead.
Okay. Is he playing guitar?
Yeah, and he's really good at that. George Shuffler picking style.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it all sounds like great fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, how could it not be? And you can sing.
I told somebody that I still enjoy playing. I'm getting older, and when you get to be older, you lose a little bit of some of the physical skills that you had when you were 40 years old.
Yeah. Oh
It
yeah.
happened to Monroe. It happens to everyone now. But as long as I can play,
Yeah.
and I can enjoy it, and I'm not a liability to the band,
No.
then
No.
I'm
Definitely.
happy to play.
Yeah.
You
You playing
I
with
don't
Doug
really-
any? Sorry.
go ahead.
You playing with Doug any?
Not much.
Yeah.
Doug is doing mostly Southern gospel stuff with
Yeah.
a family that's kin to his wife, and they do have their own little sort of bluegrass gospel thing, but they have a mandolin player, and I'm not. I played with him some in the past, but I'm not currently a part of a band as such. I just play when someone asks me to play and play at jam sessions, which is fine with me.
Yeah.
If you really want to have a good band, you just about have to go out and recruit your own band members, and that's a big investment in time and that kind of thing to be a band leader. And I am not ego-driven enough now to care that much about whether I'm on stage or somebody sees me play. You know, I enjoy playing, but not enough for me to want to be trying to be better known or something, and as a result of having a band. So I'm sort of past the point, so it's not really something I really care a whole lot about.
Well, I'm so uptight about the music, and I'm such a control freak. I have to be honest, But I want it exactly the way I want it, and I tell you, I started a band about 2 years ago. I just left it back 6 months ago because it got so stressed out.
Well, you start off and you think that you have four people that share the same objective and something that they'll practice and work toward. But as time goes along, life gets in the way and other things take priority for some of the members, or they decide they want to go in a slightly different direction from where you want it to go.
Exactly.
And then if you're not really the boss, you're not like Jimmy Martin paying them a salary or Bill Monroe paying them a salary. If you're paying a salary to them and you're working enough to be able to do that, then you can tell them, play my music the way I want it played, and practice with me, and we'll get this right. But when it's a bunch of volunteers that have decided to get together and to have a band and to play, you're not really the boss. You're more in terms of trying to persuade them to do it your way rather than telling them to do it.
Right.
And feelings and all of that can get hurt, and so.
Well,
if you're going to be in a band, you just about have to just decide to be part of what that band is trying to be part of.
Yeah.
And if you make up your mind to do that, then you can have fun playing with them. But if I were putting a band together, I would be like you. I would want the music to have a certain feel to it.
Yeah.
I'm rooted in the 50s sort of bluegrass kind of sound, and it doesn't mean that it has to be just those songs, but I would like for that flavor to be there in what we're doing.
I mean, really, it would be great if we all could come up with songs that sounded like they were written in 1955.
Right. But we don't always do that,
No.
And there was a huge amount of variety in the material that, well, you look at Scotland and Santa Claus and Stony Lonesome, and those are in a different sort of category from bluegrass breakdown or rawhide or bluegrass stone.
Yeah.
I mean, some have a blues influence, some have another influence, and yet all of those ideas came out of Monroe's head.
Yeah. You remember back in the early 80s, late 70s, he wrote a bunch of minor keyed instrumentals.
Yeah.
That on that album with My Last Day on Earth and all that.
Right.
There was some pretty radical sounds, and he was obviously just looking for new sounds the whole time,
Well, you just sort of go where the feelings are.
Yeah.
And when you're writing a piece, you get a little phrase, and you may repeat that phrase a little bit to sort of get the feel for the song going, and then it's almost each line after that it just sort of comes to you, and it seems to fit, and you wind up with what you wind up with. And I know that feeling. I mean, it's almost like, you were creative in the first line or two, but then after that, you were just sort of playing stuff that went with that. You know what I mean? You decide maybe that it's going to have a certain sort of feel to it, and so that may dictate another chord in there other than just the simple basic chords, where you're playing the relative minor in the key you're in or something. I mean, it may require something more than that, but I avoid just using a bunch of chords for the sake of making it complicated. I mean, you can make convoluted stuff that you have to practice 12 times to ever get to where you can record it, and it never sticks in your head because it has no real melody line. It has no real feeling to it when it gets through,
Yeah.
But I'm okay with folks writing stuff other than where their main interest is.
Yeah.
And I suspect Monroe did the same thing. I suspect the band that he noodled on, and maybe messed with it, but didn't really try to bring it as a polished thing to the band because it didn't sound like bluegrass to it.
Right. Well, Jerry, maybe we should just kind of start asking some questions here and pretend we're starting the interview.
Okay.
So, Jerry, it's good to have you on board here. Of course, I've known your name for a long time, and I've known you for a long time now. I think we met in '86 or so, but
right.
Of course, I had bought the album Mountain Music, excuse me, Mountain Music Bluegrass Style on the Folkways label. Yeah, and you were there, and back then I was still over in Sweden and really starving for bluegrass. I would read all the liner notes and every commentary. So I remember how we met. That was at the Bluegrass Center.
In the music store in Asheville.
That's right. And you came in. I think you were looking at the records or something.
Yep.
And,
that's right.
Yeah.
And you were working in there.
Yeah. Yes,
and you asked me if I was not Jerry Stuart.
Oh, yeah.
You recognized me, and I actually had a copy of my album for sale in the record section there.
Yeah.
The store.
There was a good job working with Clyde, and my main function was to update our record collection, which was huge, and I don't know, he just gave me this basically a blank check, just order records, so old bluegrass and old timey records and a bunch of Delta blues recordings, and it was like being a kid in a candy store for sure.
Clyde's having some health problems, but
yeah,
he's been a good friend. To bluegrass music and to a lot of us
but
for
yeah,
the years.
Absolutely, he's like family to me. I lived on and off with Clyde for a few years there back in the '80s.
Right.
Living in the basement of the Bluegrass Center was a good experience. It wasn't very. The life wasn't very, I guess, conducive to early mornings. I remember jamming all night there, with Robert Blankenship and people like that, And, of course, you remember Robert, too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
Robert.
Robert was a wonderful friend, He was.
He was. And a good musician.
Oh, yeah. And, he was, when I came here in '86, Robert was 66 years old. I was 28. And we were sort of best buddies there for a few years. And we had so much in common, even though we came from such different backgrounds,
Well, you had the love of the music.
Yeah, exactly.
Robert's dad, I didn't know his dad, but his dad was an old-time fiddle player.
I did not know that. I did.
And Robert told me this, and I was invited to go to the VA hospital. Robert had been playing there 20-some years.
Yep,
and, at the time, and I was invited by the guitar player to come, and I went, and I showed up with the mandolin, and Robert sat down in the audience, and show started, and Robert was sitting in the audience, and I was embarrassed because I didn't come to try to displace somebody that had been coming for a long time, and so I asked Robert to get up and play, and so he said he would play an old fiddle tune on the mandolin. And then later, he started bringing the bass and playing the bass.
Oh, yeah.
I would swap off with him for a tune or two, and he would play the mandolin. And he told me, he said, mandolin playing on the songs better than mine. And he said, I know most of the old fiddle tunes because my dad was a fiddle player.
Oh.
And so we sort of got off to a rough start, not because I was trying to make it that way, but that's just how it worked out. I was new to the area and didn't know Robert and didn't know how well respected he was, but
yeah,
it just didn't seem right to me that someone that normally had been playing was sitting in the audience, you know.
Well, you know, Robert was a very humble man.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
He was. And even at the Bluegrass Center, he'd show up and he wouldn't get his mandolin out, and so if I was already playing in the jam session, I would just say, Robert, I need to go get a Coke or something here, play, and I just hand my mandolin to him to get him into the jam session, you know. And that finally went away, but it was sort of awkward for a while. Yeah. But Robert was widely admired in the area, and rightfully so.
Oh, yeah.
And he was very forthright. If somebody was not keeping time in the jam session, Robert was not the least bit bashful about calling them out and saying, you know, you're lagging or you're not on the beat, or you know, and that makes for a better jam when you've got somebody that's sort of enforcing the rules. But
yeah.
So it was a strange combination. He was a very humble person, but he could also be outspoken.
Yep. I remember, you know, we would gather at Ronnie Smith's house, or at Robert's house, you know, and pick, and you know, Ronnie and Randy Burgess, and you know, they enjoyed talking and visiting as much as they did picking, and you know, there'd be like 10, 15, 20 minutes between each song, and sometimes Robert would just remind us that we were there to pick. So, you know, yeah. Well, yeah. So
I went to a birthday party for Ronnie Smith last year. Hicks was there. And, there was a ton of great musicians from the area. I'm so glad that I made an effort to do that, because I got to renew friendships with folks that I used to know when I lived up there.
Sure.
You know, and don't see much since I'm living back in Siler City.
Right. Yeah. Well, speaking of Siler City, so you and Hicks probably knew of each other a long time ago?
Well, when I was growing up, Hicks is a few years older than I.
Right.
3 or 4 years. And he was like J.B. Prince a few years later. J.B. was a really outstanding fiddle player when he was a young teenager. I'm talking about 12, 13 years old.
Oh, I know.
And Bobby had the same kind of reputation. And I would see Bobby play with these bands, and everybody in the band was older than Bobby. And I'm sure that the band leader or someone in the band went by Bobby's house in Greensboro and picked him up and provided transportation to and from the Fiddlers Convention or whatever. So I saw Bobby, but I didn't really know him as a friend.
Okay.
You know? And,
so what year would this have been?
This would have been in the early 50s.
Okay. So like he played with...
I began playing on the radio in 1953, so it would have been prior to that.
Okay. What station were you playing on?
Siler City, WNCA. It was a small 1,000-watt station.
Yeah. Okay.
AM.
So who was in that band?
It was, in the beginning, there were three of us. Penny Phillips played rhythm guitar and sang lead. Myself on mandolin, and Reed Marley played Chet Atkins, Merle Travis style guitar, electric guitar. And then later, June Jenkins joined us on the upright bass, and June was a tenor singer. So at that time, I had not learned to sing baritone, so we played at the State Fair in Raleigh in the Folk Festival during those years, and entered the Gospel Quartet competition. And I had him just move his lips so that it looked like he was singing, and I sang bass, and we won some money for band and quartet, that kind of thing. But
awesome.
Bobby, I got to know Bobby later. Well, in the 60s, say 66, 67, somewhere along in there, I played with Albert Vestal in a band called the Green Valley Ramblers.
Right.
And it had Donald Bean on banjo, who was later with the Bluegrass Experience.
Right.
And he and Paul Bean, his brother, Paul, and I learned the Monroe mandolin stuff together, shared the same records when we were learning, Anyway, I played in this band with Albert, and I got out of that band for a while and played in a band that Garland Shupin was in.
Yeah, that's right. I remember.
And that was the Bluegrass Gentlemen, and after Garland left, we were invited to Nashville and played the Ryman on a Friday night at the old Ryman Auditorium on the Opry, which was a real thrill. But Bobby was dating a girl that was a cousin to Albert, and she mentioned to Albert that she was dating a fiddle player named Bobby Hicks, and so Albert said, well, I'd like to meet him. I know who he is. I'd like to meet him. And Bobby had moved back to North Carolina from Vegas, where he had been for several years, and he had been out of bluegrass since he had left Bill Monroe.
Yeah.
And so people knew his name because of those great things he had recorded with Monroe, but nobody had seen him play.
Right.
And so he wound up needing work, and Albert's little band was working right much, and so he began to play with them, and then I rejoined the band after Bobby had begun to play with them, and so that's when I had an opportunity to get to know Bobby and to play with him and that sort of thing. That went on for a couple of years or so. We played several of Carlton Haney's festivals and other festivals, with Hicks, and even after Bobby was with Ricky Skaggs, if Skaggs wasn't working on a weekend when there was a festival back in North Carolina, Bobby would show up at the festival.
Okay, yeah.
He came up to me one day, and we were getting ready to go on stage at Camp Springs, and he says, you got a fiddle player? And I said, no. He said, can I play with you? And I said, you'll have to audition first. Of course you can play with us. It wasn't about money. It was just that, he could play with anybody on the bill, and probably did play with others before the day was out.
Yeah.
But,
but
it was, so it's good to get a chance to get back on stage with Bobby.
Yeah, and you recorded, well, he was on your solo album there.
Right. He consented to help me. And while we're telling Bobby Hicks stories, during that recording session, there was a gospel tune that I recorded called "Must I Go and Empty Handed." And I told Bobby I wanted triple fiddles on it, and he said okay. So he recorded the lead part, and he asked me if it was okay if he played the lead part high one time, and I said sure. You're going to take all the breaks. You're going to kick it off and take all the breaks. And so when we were ready to overdub the other parts to the fiddle, I went in there to sit down with Bobby. Bobby hadn't been in the recording studio since he left Monroe, so he was a little nervous. And actually, he was nervous because he was making up what he was doing as he went. And if he messed up, he couldn't go back and fix a line because he didn't know what he had just played. He just played off the top of his head.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He didn't have it all committed to memory, and so he was concerned about that, and I told him, don't worry about it. If you do something you don't like, you can just play the whole break again.
Yeah.
You make up another break. Play what you want to.
Right.
And so So anyway, we were in there, and the guy in the studio says, "Just so I can label the track, are you going to do the tenor part on the fiddle or the baritone part on the fiddle first?" And Bobby looked at me and raised an eyebrow up, raised one eyebrow up like he will, and he said, "I was going to do both of them at the same time.
Right,
No
yeah.
problem." And I said,
Yeah.
"No, it's not a problem if you can do that." And he said, "Oh, I can do it."
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He played both harmony parts at the same time.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know another fiddle player that was doing that.
No.
You know, that to me was totally unique on his part. I'm sure others, having seen Bobby do it, have worked at trying to accomplish that.
Yeah, Bobby himself will tell you that Buddy Spiker is the best harmony player he knows of the older guys, you know.
Well, I think Bobby's he just absolutely tops. Now that
I agree.
Kenny's gone, I don't. You know, there are a lot of young fiddle players that can play, but Bobby gets a tone and a trueness out of the fiddle that is just totally unique as far as I'm concerned.
Plus, he's a musical visionary. You know, he got he got ideas how to stack these fiddle harmonies. You know, from the Osborne brothers trios. You know, with the high lead. That's
right.
That's something he kind of developed during his years in Vegas, and then he just kind of applied it to bluegrass, and there's a whole new fiddle sound that he developed that, you know, was first became, I guess, publicly known in 1981 around when they came out with the first bluegrass album band recording. That was like Tony Rice's bluegrass album for Rounder that, you know, developed into a whole series of albums. But that I think that was really how Bobby got really well known in this part of the country or around the world for that matter.
Well, he's a very unique and talented person.
Yeah, and I tell you, the man still loves to play. He's 84 years old, and he loves to play. You know,
I know.
I spent a couple of days with him in February before the Milton Harkis Festival there in Asheville, and we played the good bit. So his shoulder was hurting, and I said, "Let's go with me to the Bluegrass Festival," and he said, like, "Well, if I can't go and not play, and if I play, I'm gonna screw up my arm and hurt my arm even more. So I better just stay here." So the youthful enthusiasm he has at age 84, it's just awesome to be around to see, you know.
Well, he loves to play.
Yeah.
You know, he just loves to play.
Yeah.
And if I could make those sort of sounds come out of a fiddle, you'd probably have to pry it out of my hands at bedtime.
Yeah, I know. Yep. Oh, he's something else, I tell you. Yeah. So yeah, it will be really good to see the two of you together and be able to play with y'all. It'd be cool. That's on. See now, April 27th coming up here, and that's at Lorraine's Coffeehouse in Garner, North Carolina. That's basically southeast Raleigh, I guess. So you can go to the.
I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Oh, it'd be great. So, Jerry, I have a lot more questions for you, but I don't want to take up all day to you, but let's say that we'll do some more of these interviews, and then I'd like when you and Bobby get together, we could maybe do something similar and have y'all reminisce.
Okay.
Yeah, be great.
I'll be happy to do whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And seeing you and seeing the folks that come out on the 20th.
Yeah, I hope we'll have a good crowd, you know.
I hope so too, and I'm sure that with Hicks there, and you, they're going
and Jerry
to
and Jerry Stewart and Dan Wells. Oh. We'll have a big
they're
time.
They're going to be treated to some great music.
Yeah, I think so. We'll work hard at it. I'm gonna practice those lead parts on the fiddle tunes the way Bobby played and such. So you know.
Yeah, you may have to call me back about a week beforehand and tell me which tunes you've been practicing, so that I can go review those as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I know.
How does that sound?
That sounds great. I know you already have played all them old songs, you know. The moment.
I might know them already, but it probably would not hurt for me to play through them again, and get them fresher in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Jerry, it's good talking to you. We'll be back shortly again.
Okay, Jan. Thanks.
Okay, take care, my friend.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.